Ladies and gentlemen, my name is StrifeTech, and I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. Is it worth your time? On trial today, Don't Escape, 4 Days to Survive. Made by a solo developer, Scriptwelder, this is a post-apocalyptic survival point-and-click game. It's very reminiscent to older games such as King's Quest, Space Quest, and Day of the Tentacle. The story here had so much potential, but ultimately it was a letdown. Without ruining anything, you wake up in the middle of nowhere. You see the moon's broken in two, and you know you have 4 days until it crashes into Earth. You try to survive, you meet some others, you learn of a spaceship and a space station you could get to. Now, there's a lot more to the story than that, and it's loaded with mystery and uncertainty, and it builds itself up very well. But after all the build-up and all that potential, I got to the end, and it wasn't great. I then learned I didn't get the true ending, so I played again. Playing it again had some cool changes. I'll talk a little bit more about those in gameplay. It also helped solidify some of the original information we were giving regarding the mysteries. So I worked through, I achieved the true ending, and was absolutely disappointed. The game had so much going for it, but I felt after all that work I did and all the build-up, the true ending was just a letdown. The gameplay had some interesting aspects. Basically, you had to prepare for a known event that would be happening that night. You have a limited amount of time, carrying capacity, and resources. And almost every action you take will take some of your time. So you must decide if the payoff will help you survive that night's situation or not. The game is also riddled with items you may or may not need, and it even tells you that. So you have to try to decide, is it worth your time carrying that? Do I need that wrench? Should you build a bridge? Should you investigate that room? Etc. Clues to survive the night can be found on papers, from examining items, reading them, flipping them over, things like that. When the day ends, the scenario plays out, and it goes through and tells you what happened and how your actions mitigated the issues. For example, one night I had bugs, and I tried all I could, blocking windows, setting up devices that would detract them, even had some pest control. But that night, I completely failed. But it did give me some hints as to how I could survive. For example, it told me the hatch was open, so I went up, closed the hatch, and reinforced that. However, this is where I ran into a couple of problems. I was loaded back into the game moments before the scenario played out, but I only had 1 hour left. No time to really do anything, but I tried. I rearranged some things, I tried to reinforce things more, and I whittled down that hour to about 7 minutes, and tried again. And ultimately, I did not survive again. So I was loaded back again with only 7 minutes left, and I'm sitting here thinking, what can I do in 7 minutes? Ultimately, I figured that I'm dead, and I needed to reload. The other minor issue is one could technically cheese the game. You just save and instantly see the suggestions and reload and then act according to the suggestions you saw. Not a big deal, and those doing it would just be robbing themselves of an experience. Now on the second playthrough, I actually got a whole different set of events. It was the same general gameplay, but the catastrophic events that you had to prepare for each night were different. This made the second playthrough different, a little fresher. However, you had the general idea of what to do and how to play the game, that it was a little bit easier, and you were basically able to speed through all the way to the end. As you've been seeing, the pixel art is simple, but it works for the most part. There were a few times I didn't recognize what something was and thus didn't realize I could interact with it or pick it up. This made me start slowly panning the cursor across the whole map to see what was and wasn't interactable. Now, maybe this was to simulate the realistic scenario of not knowing what you can do and having to figure it out and explore everything, or maybe it was just what the solar developer was able to produce at the time. Either way, it's not a huge issue, but it did feel a little tedious at times. The sound also fell into the same category as the graphics. It was there, it did what it needed to do, it didn't detract from the game, and it worked well to emphasize moments, but the soundtrack isn't something you're going to directly remember, recognize, or even think about listening to later. So it wasn't bad, but it also didn't stand out. So, is it worth your time? Well, maybe. If you're very much into sci-fi, enjoy survival games, and are fine with a point-and-click game, then you could have a great time with this. However, it was the ending that was just so off-putting for me. I had hoped that the true ending would nicely tie up all the little discoveries and mysteries, but instead it just left you with more unsatisfying questions. Now, I'm not saying that every story needs to wrap up every little detail or anything like that, but these are the questions that could have made for a really good sci-fi ending, one that not only captivates you, but sets you up for possibly another game. There was just so much good in it. But instead, the ending, the true ending, was just generic and lackluster. My name's been StrifeTech, and thank you for watching. If you like this video, by all means, feel free to click that like button and subscribe. Also, let me know in the comments or on Twitter if there are any other games you feel that I should review. Anyhow, I'll see you next time on Is It Worth Your Time?